Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Oh, yeah. Live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Greetings from the subtropical paradise of Homer, Alaska. Good morning, my friends. Welcome to the Michael Dukes Show. It is Hump Day. Yeah, you know what I mean. It's that beautiful day of the week where we can see, I can see it, Firearms Friday from here. It's gonna be good, man. It's gonna be good. We're rocking and rolling. Tomorrow signifies the end of my first week of full broadcast ownership. It has been exciting. I actually yesterday I actually ran out of things to do for a few minutes. It literally has been 12 plus hours a day of running from one thing that broke to another, just to make sure, you know how it is. And yesterday, mid-afternoon, all of a sudden I looked around and realized nothing was on fire for a second. And I was like, maybe I can go. So I went and did some do work, some stuff that I've been had on the list for a while that wasn't urgent, and it was exciting. It's exciting to see the end of the road. You know what I mean? It's a good week. Today is Hump Day, and today is actually today. Week 1 ended last night. This morning is week 2. So anyway, what's on the program today? Well, we've got a lot of stuff going on. We have got a full slew of headlines to discuss this morning. And we're going to go through some of those. We're also going to talk a little bit more. I kind of got stuck yesterday on this discussion and topic of leadership in the state. That what we're really lacking is leadership. Because if we had true leaders, and this is in a variety of areas, whether it's political leadership, thought leadership in the form of newsmakers or news takers, journalists, if we had some leadership there, we would be asking some very hard questions in the state of Alaska and potentially being able to dodge the bullet of this fiscal situation that we're in right now. And so I think we'll continue to discuss that this morning. We're definitely going to pick up that topic with State Senator Mike Shower, who's going to be joining us in hour 2 today for his first visit of the year. It's something that we love to call the Shower Hour of Power. He's gonna come on board with us in hour 2, and we're going to talk about it. So it's gonna be fun stuff. So we'll jump in on that and talk with him about those, and then whatever other topics that he wants to delve into as well in hour 2. So I'm loving it. I'm loving it a lot. So we're going to be doing that in hour 2 this morning, working on some other guests as well for tomorrow and Friday. I'm hoping that on the first big Friday, I know that we're going to have Chris Chang and Willie Waffle, so that'll be fun. But we'll let you know as we get closer to that, what's happening and where we're going on that. All right. So headlines. Who's got your headlines? That would be me. We've got some interesting ones. Some that are going to play into some that are going to play into our discussions on leadership and everything else. We're going to get to those here in just a moment. But first and foremost, I guess we should hit some of the headlines around the state. If you're feeling like you just, you're just coming out of this storm and you're like, oh, this is great, and now we can get back to regular weather. Well, hold your coffee. There's going to be a second North Pacific storm that's going to hit the state tonight. The first one finally left southern Alaska. It finally is now leaving, and it left us in a bit of a winter meltdown with temperatures in the 40s in many areas, especially down on the peninsula. Currently, right now, outside the old studios, it's like 39 degrees and rainy. But looks like this new one is going to continue. This second round could drop more of the same, which would be rain and potentially freezing rain and wind and snow on the south central area. And no word on what it's going to do up north, but I imagine it will yo-yo you guys up in the Fairbanks area like crazy as well. Because I know somebody said yesterday in the chat room that it was 33 below like the day before, and then it was 30 degrees the next day or 2 days later. So welcome to Alaska. If you don't like the weather, just wait a minute. It'll change. That's what it's been like. But anyway, new winter storm is going to be hitting the south central area tonight, and then may pursue its way up to other parts of the state. So that's the big weather news for you guys. Also, just when we were watching New Year's Eve, we watched The Godfather. I haven't seen that movie in 30 years. And then we watched The Godfather 2 sometime this last weekend or whatever. I came in and my wife and my son were watching it. So I watched the end of it. But then I saw the trailer, and every time all I can hear is Al Pacino saying, just when I think I'm out, they pull me back in, right? So sorry, it was a long-winded way of talking about this story, because the first time I saw this headline, I'm like, wow, I thought we were just out of that. And that is the fact that April 1st is the first day to file for the Anchorage election. Because yes, Anchorage, those weirdos down there, up there, I guess, now that I'm down below them, those weirdos up there, their elections are going to be in the spring. And so we just got out of one election cycle, the national election, and the ballot measures and the dark money and and now we're getting into the new municipal elections, and filing begins on January the 10th, which is 2 days from now. The election itself is on April 1st. So I misspoke earlier. But I mean, so we're about to get into another round of hot and heavy. And I got to tell you, Anchorage has got some serious issues right now. I mean, they are this assembly, which never saw a dollar that it didn't want to spend, is looking for every way they can to fund, programs for this and that and the other thing. They upped the tariffs by 800%. Is it 800? Yeah, because it went from like 56 cents to $9 per ton or something at the Port of Alaska, which of course doesn't just affect the Anchorage area. It affects all of us other yahoos out here anywhere, because something like 85 or 90% of all freight comes through the Port of Alaska there in Anchorage. And so they upped that. That was number one. Then on top of that, they have now proposed a new sales tax in Anchorage. I don't know if you saw that. They proposed it. They're like, oh yeah, we gotta I mean, so they've got to do all this, and they were probably going to do a special election. And they said that they were going to it would establish a 3% tax on most retail goods and services. 2/3 of the tax revenue would be used for property tax relief, and the remaining 1% would go into a trust that would pay for public building amenities like trailside facilities and recreation centers. I mean, these people cannot read the room. I mean, there is a massive outflow of people from Alaska. There is problems in Anchorage with out migration from Anchorage to other parts of the state, but most noticeably to the Mat-Su. And these guys are out there trying to now the only good part about this proposal, which came from the Felix Rivera and AEDC, the Anchorage Economic Development Corporation, is that it did have a 7-year sunset on it. So it would only be in place for 7 years. This was the initial proposal. Then other assembly members proposed 4 more versions of the tax. And of course, it has to go to voters. That's the good news. But as of right now, yesterday, the Assembly postponed voting on all the competing ballot measures. And I guess they postponed it for now. They're not going to be looking at it, but they say that the estimated property tax could generate $180 million a year. Now, their budget is already over $500 million, right? That's a pretty significant amount of money for something like that. So anyway, sales tax, they're already talking about that. And of course, they've got their elections coming up, but this is again just a group that they trails and recreational centers. Hey guys, you got people leaving. You got. Oh, and by the way, some of those alternate plans that they proposed, by the way, just in case you were wondering about the other 4 plans. Alternate versions of the proposed call for a tax was between 1.5% and 3%, with less or none of the money going to property tax relief. I just don't even know what to say to that. I mean, I'm glad I just don't live in Anchorage. That's all I can say right now. I just don't even know what I can say. But this is what they're doing. They're looking right now for any available revenue. And this is, of course, this is the nature of government. We've talked about this many times. This is the nature of government, is to basically consume any available funds and to look for any way to, consume available funds and to basically grow and expand to justify their existence and everything else. It's the nature of the beast. And of course, we've seen that at every level here in the state, at the municipal level, cities, and now the state of Alaska, who wants to be everybody's sugar daddy and can't figure out that, arithmetic is a thing. And even at the national level, where we've got politicians who are in utter denial that we could be facing something horrifically bad. But that's where we're at. That's where we're at right now. It's astonishing. All right, well, we're up against the break. We've got some more headlines, and we're gonna peel through some of these while we're on Anchorage. We'll continue with Anchorage for a minute, and then we'll move on to Fairbanks here in just a minute. But we're gonna continue. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We'll be back with more. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/Michael Duke Show. Let's do that, shall we? We'll return in just a moment with Common Sense Radio right here.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, my pretties. Anthony said, are we trying to make pirates? 800% tariff increases at ports is how we get pirates. Might need to update my resume. I'd look fabulous with an eye patch, but I'd have to switch the parrot out for a raven. Don't think a parrot would hold up for the winter. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't just like a minor. We went from 50 cents to 70 cents. We went from 50, I think it was 56 or 59 cents to $9. It was like, what? Kevin McCabe is in the chat room. He said they're also very proud of their new tariffs on goods coming into the port, which is a tax, without representation, by the way, on every person who buys goods in the state. An assemblyman told me the other day, if you don't like it, then don't use the port. Oh, if only we had Port McKenzie and a rail line to Port McKenzie. If only we'd been thinking about this, right? Right. What's this? Jerica says, Mr. Dukes, please look into what the Houston mayor is doing. He's pushing through a proposal for an airport comparable to Merrill Field. Big enough for 737s to land and take off there. Literally no one in the community wants it, and he has threatened lawsuits against people who speak against him or his plans. It's the embodiment of tyranny. He's running Houston like a dictator. Well, okay. Dang. You know? Timmy says, I'm excited for Greenland to become a U.S. territory and the Gulf of America U.S. name change. What about Canada becoming part of did you see that too? I mean, I was laughing. My daughter was over at the station doing some work, and she's like, the what? I mean, it's just so hyperbolic to all the things that the president-elect has been saying right now. Every time I look, I just go, what? Now, the Greenland thing is interesting because Harry Truman actually suggested during his term that we could basically subsume Greenland. And we've had a presence there, military presence in Greenland since World War II. But the people of Greenland, what they're really looking for is autonomy. They're looking for independence from Denmark. But I mean, it's interesting. The Gulf of America thing, I mean, that's what are you going to do? I don't know. I don't know what you're going to do. I'm going back here. Dumping grounds, millions of illegals. I see Henry's talking about the illegals again. I mean, I know illegals in the country are a problem. I'm not saying that they're not. Okay. I think I'm all caught up here on all this stuff right now. Okay. Good morning. Man, Greg says Port McKenzie's going to get busy. Well, you would hope it would, but the problem with Port McKenzie is that it has no rail line to it. So it's not like you can bring a container ship over to McKenzie and just it's not like you've got two identically competing ports across the inlet from each other. One is fully ready and it's got, rail access and containers can be just offloaded and everything else. And the other one is kind of standing out on the end of one of the most dangerous roads in the state. KGB Kanekusa Bay Road is so yeah. I mean, if we had been smart about this, and I'm not saying that, some people like Kevin McCabe and others weren't trying to do this, we need a rail line out there. But we'll have to see. Jeannie points out that we have Seward and a railway. It just makes it harder. I don't know. I'm not that familiar with the Seward facility, but I don't think it's as big. But we'll see. We'll see what's going on. Paul says, I'm snowed in, not in Alaska, but in Kentucky. Sorry, Paul. Sorry, Paul. All right, here we go, guys. Let's get back to it. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all the YouTube-y things. Only 11 of you have liked this. What, you don't like me? What?
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Huh. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
Okay. Somebody in the chat room brought up the Greenland thing. You know, whether we should subsume Greenland, whether Canada should become the 51st state. Canada, the 51st. And, of course, the Gulf of America thing, where it was the Gulf of Mexico and now the president's. There's so much hyperbole flying around on this stuff. I mean, I literally think that the president-elect is just trolling the nation at this point. Not everybody, but I mean, he just, you know, it's like some of the times you just say things that are out. Now, the interesting thing about Greenland, and I just mentioned this during the break, but the interesting thing about the Greenland thing is that he's not the first president to suggest it. Harry Truman actually suggested it after World War II, and we've had a huge military huge military presence in Greenland since World War II. They're actually a colony or fiefdom of Denmark. The people in Greenland, they just want autonomy. They just want their own freedom. I don't know if they'd want to become part of America, and I don't know if that's something we'd want to add. But anyway, yeah, just all this crazy stuff flying around. My daughter was just, she's like, what is the what? And I just had to laugh because I think sometimes the president-elect is just out there going, I think he's just throwing stuff out there to get the more grist for the machine. Let's change Denali back to McKinley. Let's change the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. Let's take Canada and make it a state. Let's do Greenland, and we'll do with military force. And I mean, you know, it's just like sometimes I wonder. But there you go. All right. We were talking about Anchorage before we went to break. Sorry, I got sidetracked there. Can I just again say how grateful I am that I don't live down in Anchorage? Not only do they have these ridiculous, new revenue proposals going on and everything else, I noticed this when I went back on Sunday night and then Monday morning right before the show, and I was looking at any story that I'd missed over the course of the vacation time that I was on. And it was like shooting, attack, another shooting, police shoots, robber shoots. I mean, there was like shootings every week. There's 2 or 3 shootings now in Anchorage. And I'm just like, wow. Now, yesterday, Anchorage police officers shoot a suspect following a report of an armed robbery in Midtown. They said it was on 2 p.m. in the 500 block of Northern Lights. They didn't identify the business that was attacked during the robbery, but officers did arrive, and the suspect was armed with a handgun trying to get into an ATM, and the guy didn't respond, and they finally shot him 5 to 8 rounds, with only 2 rounds actually striking the guy. So somebody needs a little more range time. Anyway, that was just the latest. I mean, I'm not. You wonder why I go forth armed. And then up in Wasilla, a 38-year-old man was shot and killed at a home in Wasilla following a string of attempted break-ins on Sunday night, according to troopers. Emil Hampton was pronounced dead at a house in Meadow Lakes. They said they responded to the area at 10:30 p.m. on Sunday for the report of a suspicious male acting erratically. While they were responding to the complaint, The complainant reported that a shot had been fired striking the suspicious male. He had attempted to enter the vehicles and buildings on their properties prior to him being shot. They are investigating, but again, this is the part of the problem, like with Wasilla, is you make a phone call, and how long is it going to take for the troopers to get there? Luckily, this homeowner was able to defend themselves in this regard. Acting erratically in Wasilla, in my experience, is code for how about a little meth. And so luckily they were able to do it. But again, you wonder why I carry a gun in Alaska. Well, here's just two stories back to back, one in Anchorage, one in Wasilla. And I'm sure there's probably one down here on the Kenai somewhere that we could find as well, and probably one up in the interior. But it's just, go forth armed, folks. Constantly vigilant, head on a swivel, situational awareness, all that kind of stuff. Be paying attention to everything that's going on. All right, let's get up to Fairbanks. And I want to talk to Melissa about this. Melissa, who's a friend of mine and a listener to the show. I know she's checks in most mornings in the chat room on her way by. But she's quoted in an article from KTUU talking about the Fairbanks North Starborough School District's consolidation plans. I don't know if you heard this. If you're up in Fairbanks, you probably did. They have decided that they want to close 5 schools. 5 schools are recommended for closure. The closures come as part of a consolidation plan because they have a $16 million budget deficit and a 15% drop in student enrollment. That's a wicked, wicked combination. I guess my first question is, how did you get a $16 million budget deficit? Walk me through the steps of how you got to that part. The 15% drop in student enrollment is not unexpected, because that's how they do things. That's the trend right now, and has been for years. The trend is that student enrollment is down in traditional brick and mortar schools. Meanwhile, homeschooling and unit study and all the other types of independent learning have seen an increase. But here you go. The schools recommended for closure include Hunter Elementary, which is that's a blast from the past. Hunter Elementary has been around since I was a kid. They're only at 66% capacity. Midnight Sun Elementary at 61% capacity. Pearl Creek at 70% capacity. Salcha Elementary at 80% capacity, and Two Rivers Elementary at 7% capacity. So that is that's the 5 schools that they're talking about. They say that they're not going to close them and sell them off. They're actually going to repurpose them and doing that. They said that they would still see savings from the large elementary schools in the $1 to $1.2 million range every year. They would initially be a higher amount of savings, up to 1.8 million, and they would step down over a 5-year period to about $1 to $1.2 million per year if they keep the buildings. And of course, then the good news is that if the enrollment turns around, they could reopen them. But Melissa Burnett is quoted from the KTUU last night saying that she has concerns about the closures, but there were positive aspects of the plan. Now, these are the 2 things that I thought of when I saw the list yesterday or day before. These are the first 2 things that I thought of, and we just didn't get a chance to talk about it. But 2 of those schools, Salcha and Two Rivers, they're way out there. Okay. Two Rivers, I mean, not as much as, but Salcha, you're out at Salcha, which is out by Harding. For those of you who don't know the Fairbanks area, Salcha is out by Harding Lake. I mean, it's 49, 50, 55 miles out of town. And they're talking about having to transport these kids all the way into town. And yet the school, by the way, that school is at 80% capacity. So I know in Anchorage, we were talking about some of the schools there have below a 50% capacity, and people are still fighting about whether they should be closed or not. This is a school at 80% capacity. And you're going to move those kids where and how long are they going to have to be on a bus? Because according to what Melissa, well, I'll just read what Melissa said. She said, my concerns with Salcha and Two Rivers, transportation times for students who'd be transported to Weller or to Anderson Crawford, those are big concerns considering the ruralness of those schools and the communities that they're in. With Salcha, you have families all the way out towards Birch Lake, which is another, 20 miles out beyond Harding Lake. And she said, what does that drive time look like? Having those kinds of answers so that we can truly give those rural communities a good solid footprint is what's going to happen and what it looks like. She did say that, that this is it. She said, if the board does vote in favor of closing all 5 or a different combination of 5 schools, she says there's no more closures. This is absolutely it. Now, Melissa and I are going to have to talk. First of all, you never say never. You never say never, because what if, can I play the what if game here for a minute? What if the state continues its fiscal meltdown? What if we don't get all these increases in education funding that everybody's pushing? What if the student enrollment continues to decline? They had a 15% drop in enrollment this year. 15%. What if it's 15% next year? That's cumulative, right? So now over 2 years, you've got a net. What is that? Is it 23% or something? 15% of a whole, and then another 15% of the same remaining whole, and then another 15% of the remaining. I mean, if you keep going at between 5 and 15% decline in enrollment over the course of 5 years, why would you? There are no more closures. This is absolutely it. So she and I are going to talk about that. But I mean, this is the new reality. And I know as soon as I saw this, the Facebook crowd was out there just, lamenting about how could you close the school where my children have gone and I went and my grandparents went and my great-great-great-grandparents went, and how could you do that? And I even had a friend who made a comment on Facebook in a different post that said, if our school closes, this is going to put a strain on our family because we're going to have to send our kid to another school, or we'll have to, whatever it was, juggling something. And but that's life, right? I think that this is the emotional investment of the parents a lot of times more than it's projection more than the kids. I remember when I was a kid, we changed from Joy to Barnett. I went from Joy School to Barnett School. I was in 2nd or 3rd grade, I think. And I mean, it was just a thing. I just went to a different school. It wasn't, I don't even remember the reason why, but it just happened. I wasn't upset that I didn't get to go back to my old school. But you see these parents and they're like, oh, my child is so distraught. And I'm like, because you're distraught and you're projecting it on them and winding them up over it. It's just a school. Maybe a little bit more inconvenient for you, maybe 10 minutes further away, maybe this, maybe that. But there comes a point where you can't be all things to all people. You can't do everything. You can't have every school building available and open all the time. So, I mean, but Fairbanks has actually been pretty good about this. Although, again, the Facebook and the public crowd is the weeping and the wailing and the gnashing of teeth online to me is just mind-blowing. But we'll see. We'll see where it goes. I'm trying to get Melissa back, or getting Melissa on the program to talk about this. We'll see if we can do this maybe tomorrow. We're working on that. So we'll see where we go. All right. We're coming up. I got one more segment, and we're going to talk about leadership and the lack, I guess I would say the lack of leadership here in the state. And some prime examples of that right now. We will return. The Michael Duke Show, broadcasting live across the state of Alaska. More common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio when we return.
What is that?
Common sense. Regularly heard on American radio. Michael Duke Show. Radio.
Okay. Whew, man. I had more stories that I kind of got sucked into that one, didn't I? But yeah, when I looked at that, I was like, oh, Melissa, I don't know if you should have said that. This is it. This is it. No more closures. This is absolutely it. I don't think that's how that works. I'm just trying to point that out. I don't think that is how that cookie crumbles. All right, let me get back over to the headlines. 15 of you are now liked it. There's like 75 of you between Rumble and Facebook and YouTube and everything else. And only 15 of you. How many are on Facebook right now? Can it show me? 49 of you on Facebook. Only 15 have liked it. 16 have liked it. Are you going to make me beg? That's unpleasant. All right, let me go over here. Kevin says, talking about President Trump's thing, he says, let's rename Denali, the Gulf of Alaska, buy Greenland, annex Canada. The art of the deal on full display again. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's just hyperbole, right? That's just the oof. Brian says, KGB Road is far from dangerous. It's the morons that love to tailgate that are dangerous. Brian, I'm not saying that the road itself is like full of ruts and it will drag you. I'm like, it is a dangerous throughway. And you're right. It's mostly because of the people, but that was a dumb argument, Brian. I love you, but that's a dumb argument. Okay. Let's see. I'm scrolling through what's going on. Squirrel, says Frank. That's what we yell to distract. Trump just throws stuff to distract and see how the media will react. I know, that's exactly it. He loves to, And of course, with Justin Trudeau stepping down now, it's interesting. Yeah, Pete says a lot when I said the cops, fired 8 rounds and only 2 struck the suspect. Somebody needs some more range time. Pete says a lot more range time. Let's see. Anthony says, my only worry if someone breaks into my home isn't whether or not I'm safe. It's that I grab the wrong weapon platform in the dark, half asleep, and make a mess I have to deal with. Absolutely. If I accidentally grab this box-fed AR-style shotgun and start throwing buckshot down the hall, I'm ruining my relationship with the cleaning companies. Oh, man. Anyway, Richie also says he thinks I'm onto something with the trolling the left and the loony bin. I get it. Yeah. Let's see. Homeless shelters. Good morning. Harold says you could solve all these school closing by announcing the state will open a new Alaska Department of Energy and announce 100% state ownership of the LNG gas line. Weren't you just saying yesterday, Harold, that the gas delivered at the end of the pipe would never be economical? Isn't that what you were just saying? And hasn't it been part of the problem that the investment into the pipeline has never been economical for a $44 billion pipeline to develop, that when gas is, when you got to deliver gas and you're delivering it, what, $18 per MCF or something, and the market is down at 12, 11, 10, somewhere in there. And how is that going to solve the school closing announcements? Again, I think Harold's taken a page from Trump's book on the whole hyperbole thing. David Boyle says, when students migrate to correspondence schools, the district loses money because correspondence schools only get 90%. So in many districts, the B&M student is worth about 2 times the value of the correspondence students. Thus, the districts lose a lot of money. David, we should talk about this. If you have time tomorrow, we should come on and talk about this. If you're listening, David, still, this comment was 10 minutes ago. So David, if you're still on, we should talk about this. Let's see. One senator in Anchorage wants a $1,900 BSA increase. Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, exactly. Okay, I'm just going through. It's just a building, said Pete. Yeah, I know. 17 seconds here. I'm way behind on the comments. What do you mean it never affected you? Did you ask your friends? Yeah, I mean, wait, I'm supposed to have friends? You have friends? How?
Public enema number 1. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number 1, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
Oh, man. Welcome back. Ooh, baby. Common Sense Radio. It's what we do every day right here. Monday through Friday, anyway. We were just talking in the chat room about this school stuff and everything else, going over all the topics from the last segment. If you want to be part of the Cool Kids Club, you can be part of the 6 o'clock club. If you're listening to me right now, you're already officially a member of the 6 o'clock club because you got up before 7 and you listened to the program. But if you want to be really one of the really cool kids, you can join us on Facebook or YouTube or Rumble and be part of the conversation there as well. There's a lot of people in there hanging out, chitty-chatting. We got 70, 75 people, I guess. Between all the platforms, talking about all the stuff we're talking about this morning. Is a great place to be. Anyway, leadership in the state of Alaska. That's where I wanted to go. So, first of all, do I even want to get into this? I guess I will. Dunleavy, the administration, has now suing the federal government over the Anwar lease sale that's scheduled for Friday. I don't know if you saw this. The state on Monday filed in federal court to sue the Biden administration over restrictions on the gas sale lease at Area 1002 in Anwar. The ADN article goes through kind of the whole history of the thing, but the most interesting paragraph in the whole article about the suit against the Department of Interior was this comment. And I want to go back to this leadership issue, to the whole discussion we had yesterday about how the governor started off strong and then immediately rolled over, went on himself and said, "Don't hurt me, Daddy," and has just done the expected thing ever since. And in some ways, I guess I'm being a little hard on Mike Dunleavy. He's a great guy. And maybe I shouldn't expect more. Maybe I shouldn't, because again, he did get slapped down hard with the recall and everything else, and there was total freak-outery going on. I understand that. But that's the hard job, right? That's what you have to do sometimes. Somebody has to be the adult in the room to tell the teenager that I just can't buy you that Xbox because we don't have the money, right? Somebody's got to be the adult. So maybe I'm being too hard on him, but I don't think so. Okay, so anyway, I mean, I like the guy. I'm disappointed in his stance. Let's just put it that way. But here's the statement. This is the one thing out of this is a big, long article from Alex DeMarban over at the ADN. It's a good read. You should go read it. It gives you a lot of details on it. But this is the Alaska Governor Mike Dunleavy said in a statement Tuesday that the lawsuit is important in part to help provide a source of future money for the Alaska Permanent Fund. State needs more money. State needs more money. Uncle Sugar got to get paid. That's it. Anyway, but again, continuing with our discussion on the lack of leadership, there was another announcement. James Brooks over at the Alaska Beacon has got this article up. I got to tell you, I think it was Dermot Cole that also on his blog yesterday, I read a piece on his blog where he was talking about this same thing. And Brad Keithley was discussing this with us yesterday morning on the weekly top 3. Remember how they said that the Gasline Development Corp, AGDC, that they were going to close down by the end of the year. Remember that? If they didn't have something substantive in place, they were going to close down by the end of the year. And then crickets happen. And then what happens on Monday? Frank Richards, the head of the AGDC, got up and had a press conference in Anchorage with the governor and said that it is in secret, super secret, double secret, squirrel indemnified negotiations with an energy company to lead and fund the project. Now, where have we heard that before? Let's cast your mind back for a minute. Think back. Oh, that's right. Governor Walker. Remember when Governor Walker was in secret negotiations with a company to do a bunch of stuff that never happened or never transpired? And then later on, remember it was going to be China was going to underwrite a bunch of stuff. Do you remember all that? Does anybody remember that? Anyway, AGDC is in secret squirrel negotiations with an energy company. He declined to share any details on the potential agreement, including the name of the state's partner. You're going to have to trust us on this. We didn't close down our office because we finally succeeded in the 11th hour when you weren't looking. We are now negotiating with a secret entity. We promise this time it's really going to work. At the news conference, Frank Richards said, quote, "I'm announcing that AGDC has reached an exclusive framework agreement with a qualified energy company to privately lead and fund the development of the Alaska LNG project." Now, I don't want to seem too reflexively bitter about this. I would love it if some private entity actually is going to stand up and develop Alaska gas pipeline. I would love that. I would celebrate it. I would be excited about it. It's something that I've wanted for years, but I was also rational enough to realize that the economics were not going to work out on it. But here it is. An exclusive framework agreement. I don't know exactly what that means, but it's an agreement to have an agreement, maybe. He said, "I expect a formal announcement of the definitive agreement in the next few months." Did they just extend the life of AGDC for another year? Is that what they just, Dunleavy has been skeptical about the gas line, but in the article they're saying now he believes actual progress is being made. We've been talking about a gas line in the state of Alaska for it's more than 50 years. In the article, they say 50 years, but I remember sitting in Jim Whitaker's office, Jim Whitaker, who is the former FNSB borough mayor, but was also involved in the Alaska Port Authority, the Fairbanks Port Authority, for years. He actually had a framed behind his desk, he had a framed newspaper. It was a piece of newsprint. It was the front page of a newspaper. And it said gas line, I think it said, if I remember correctly, it said gas line next year. And it was from 1958. That's how long they've been working. That's how long they've known that there's gas on the North Slope. and how long they've been saying the gas line will be here next year. Dunleavy also said he intends to introduce legislation this year that will incentivize gas production in the Cook Inlet. Wait, didn't we just... Again, let's cast back into the way past. And who did that again? Oh, right. The tax credits, the $1 billion tax credits that we finally had to stop because we were losing hundreds of millions of dollars paying for all this incentivization to the... Yeah, okay. So we're going to do that again? We're going to do... Oh. Anyway, Dunleavy went on to say that, and I mean, at least here's one bit of good news. He said, one energy source alone will not be sufficient to meet the state's needs. He said hydroelectric, geothermal, wind, solar, coal, and nuclear power are all options for the state. Thank God somebody actually mentioned nuclear. He said, I have no doubt the large gas line will be disparaged and questioned. I questioned it for years, to be perfectly honest with you, but there's some real concrete steps going forward, and I think we're entering a phase of reality for this pipeline. I'm not disparaging the pipeline. I want a pipeline, but I am being realistic in the, is it even feasible economically without some influx of money from the state or the Fed or somebody else? Is it doable by a private entity? Which should be the question that everybody's asking, because that's the only way to really make this work in the long run, is a private entity. I don't want the state. I don't want the state. No, I don't want the state owning it. I don't want the feds. Have you been to the DMV? Have you been to the post office? Is that what you want running a gas line? Right? Is that what you want? No. Anyway, I guess we'll see where this goes, but yeah, I mean, oh, by the way, what they didn't mention in this article is that AGDC also made an agreement with ADIA to pay $50 million towards the pre-feed. That's the front end development, engineering and development. And they didn't ask the governor's going to just stuff it into the supplemental budget. They're going to beg forgiveness rather than ask permission. So there's another $50 million. We talked about that a little bit yesterday. But that's part of this whole deal here. He's got a framework agreement with a company, but apparently they wouldn't pony up the $50 million for the feed. The state's going to pay for that. Tell me how this framework agreement works again. Tell me how binding it is. No. Hour 2 is dead ahead. Mike Shower is going to be joining us. The Michael Duke Show. Common Sense Radio. We've got a framework agreement. Okay. A framework agreement. What is that? What does that mean? What exactly does that mean? Anyway, a framework agreement. All I could think of is, again, all I can think of is the whole Walker thing where, again, they had a secret squirrel agreement and all this other kind of stuff. And even legislators couldn't know what was going on. And anyway, it's one of those things. Jeffrey, haven't seen Jeffrey in a while. Happy New Year, Jeffrey. He says, my son bought his house with the quality of the school in mind. And I understand that people buy a house based on how close it is to the local school and everything else. But again, that's life, right? Things change. We have to understand that if there's not enough money or if the capacity is too low, sometimes you got to consolidate. It may make your life more inconvenient, but it's not the end of the world. I mean, if it's that big a deal, sell your house and move to another district, right? Or should we just keep a school open at half capacity? And do, I mean, I understand that there's a lot of emotions that can be tied up into this, but in the end, it is what it is. All right, let me go over here. Gotta get Mr. Shower. All right. Let me get this all. Excuse me while I whip this out here. Let me get this all squared away here. See if we can get Mike Shower on the line here this morning. Hey, look at that. Worked first time. It's always good. It's always a good sign.
Oh.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you this morning?
Tired. How are you?
Happy New Year. Well, yeah, welcome to my world. That's how we roll around here. How was your New Year?
It was good. I was with family, so we were all together with the kids and grandkids. That was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good. It was relaxing, quiet, which was fine, actually.
It was fine. Fine, just fine. Wow, convince me more. Well, why don't you go get a cup of coffee for a minute, and I'll be back to you here in just a second, okay? And then we can be ready.
I'll spin myself up. Yeah.
Yeah, would you spin yourself up? I mean, I know that I'm looking forward to the end of the show because at the end of the show today, there's a fresh BB's Bakery donut sitting out on the front counter with cream-filled, chocolate-stuffed, whatever. That I can't wait. It's my occasional treat, and so I'm looking forward to the end of the show today already.
You don't get that until the show's over, I see.
No, it's reward for doing the show. It's a reward for getting up early and doing the show. So there we go.
All right.
I'll be right back to you. Go get some Java, my friend, and we'll do it. David says, Michael, see you tomorrow. David, let's shoot for our Melissa just said that she can come on tomorrow as well. So let me see what David, why don't you come on? Well, why don't you email me, David, and we'll work out the 6 or 7 o'clock hour tomorrow on the show, depending on where you're at and what's going on. So we'll do that. Okay. 2 friends, no more, just 2. Okay. Man, I am so far behind on the comments at this point. Just FYI, another shooting in Anchorage this morning. Every day now. Every day. Did you just make that up? No. I'm scrolling through here. Wait, somebody actually reads what Dermot Cole writes, said Kevin? Well, somebody sent me the article, so that's why I read it. Usually I don't read Dermot Cole because I usually vehemently disagree with him and I hate his snarky tone. Going through the thing in a bridge, drill baby drill, dig baby dig. Micro nuke, said Jeannie. Yeah, exactly. Jennifer Johnson, millions of dollars to bogus gas office since 1980s. There has been, yeah, you're exactly right. Millions of dollars have been poured into the various AGDC, the Gasline Corporation, the Fairbanks Port Authority, millions of dollars. They've been trying to do this for years. Okay. Frank says, I don't understand why there's an emotional attachment to schools. I don't either, but maybe it's just me. Good morning. Donuts from Jason's Donuts, said Chris. Oh, donuts from Jason's are also not bad. But if you're down here, BB's Bakery. If you're in Homer, BB's Bakery. It's a chocolate filled, whatever you call it. It's a chocolate shell filled. The thing must weigh a half a pound. They put a bunch of cream in it. Nothing worse than getting a cream filled donut and it only has cream in like one corner of it, So good. So good. I can't wait. Try BB sausage, gravy, and biscuits. Best I've ever had, said Brill. I have, and it is delicious. They are good biscuits and gravy. Absolutely delicious. I had that 3 or 4 weeks ago. Okay. I do have my issues. Okay, good. I think I'm all caught up. Look at that. I'm all caught up. I'm clipping your Dermot analysis. He blocked me for memeing him, said Joel. Joel said, I'm clipping your Dermot analysis. Go ahead and clip away, my friend. Clip away. All right, here we go. The Michael Duke Show. Common Sense Radio.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Good morning, my friends, and welcome back to the Michael Duke Show. It is just another beautiful hump day, Wednesday, ready to do this. Get on the downhill slide to Firearms Friday. And as we normally do, we are ready to talk to State Senator Mike Shower for what we lovingly call the Shower Hour of Power, where we get a chance to talk to Mike about wood ticks, lunatics, and politics. I don't know if that's a thing, but that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Let's get in here and get him squared away with us this morning. State Senator Mike Shower joins us on the phone right now. Good morning, Senator. How are you, my friend? How was the new year and everything else?
Well, a happy new year to you.
Thank you.
Fine.
It was fine.
Is that a little better? Is it a little more?
Yeah, it was fine. Because I asked him during the break, and he's like, "It was fine." I'm like, "Is it fine, just fine?" Or I mean, is it like, "Wow, sell it to me, man. Give me some enthusiasm."
It's kind of like when your wife, you ask her, "Is everything okay?" She goes, "Fine." You're like, "Uh-oh."
Yeah, no, exactly. If my wife ever says, I'm like, "How you doing?" "Fine." I'm like, "Oh God, what did I do?"
What happened?
Help me now. Help me. Yeah.
No, fine.
Yeah.
Not that kind of fine. It was fine. It was with the kids, grandkids. Had a great time. It was relaxing. We were just enjoying time together. So yeah, it was cool.
It was cool. It was cool. Just cool.
A relaxing time. Nothing spectacular. It was just a nice, relaxing New Year's. So
yeah.
That was pretty neat.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
It
was good. All right. Well, I'm glad we're glad to have you back for this beautiful Wednesday. The topic for today, my friend, has been, well, actually, the topic for the last couple days has revolved around leadership. And I want to give you your head so you can talk about the issues that you want to talk about. But I want to start this first because, again, for those who don't know, Mike Shower, military background, fighter pilot, Air Force, colonel, got the whole, you're part of that culture. You understand the importance of leadership, right? I mean, leadership is critical to any organization. And so the last couple of days we've been talking about leadership in the state. And let me just say this, the leadership in the state is lacking. And I mean leadership from a political leader standpoint, from legislators, governor, but leadership from thought leaders like newsmakers, news takers, journalists. There's just been no leadership because the one thing that we're hearing about from the opinion pieces and the news articles and everything else is how we just need to spend more. We could fix the things in Alaska if we just spent more on fill in the blank, whatever the soup du jour is for the day. The problem is that nobody Although I will say Larry Persily mentioned it in one short sentence in his last opinion piece this week in the ADN, when he then went on to talk about forget about the PFD and just spend it on government. Nobody else is talking about the fact that we have a $1.56 billion deficit this year, that we're already talking about potentially a $200 million supplemental budget for this last fiscal year. So that's $1.75 billion. And that the 10-year forecast projects more of the same for the next 10 years. And my question to you is, Mike, because you and I talk about this occasionally. We've talked about this occasionally. Some other guests, some other politicians that I bring in, when I bring the topic up, they will talk about it. But I don't see anybody out there that every time they get a mic stuffed in their face, every time they go on Facebook Live, every time they get up on the floor, every time they're quoted in the newspaper or have an interview, they're not starting off with, we have a fiscal crisis that needs to be addressed and we've got to acknowledge it. Otherwise, it'll never be saved and we'll just crash into the wall. What say you?
Well, Michael, you and I have been talking about this pretty much since I have been in the legislature. We talk about it all the time. I have put in cumulatively somewhere north of $2 billion worth of reductions to state spending. What has happened from that? Nothing. None of mine have ever made it past any of the legislative sessions on the floor. None of my amendments have ever passed for that. Not when I was in finance, not when I put them in on the floor during the budget debates. There are a few that talk about it. You're right. I mean, Representative Carpenter was one that, harped on the reality often. Him and I sat down many, many hours discussing this very topic. But you go back to, my friend, when you are one or two or a handful out of 60 or 61 or more, if you include the courts, who always seem to rule in favor of more government, bigger government. You have a press that is generally complicit on the left side of the political spectrum that is, of course, more government, all about government and spending that money. I've told you that I've had legislators come up to me and tell me, Mike, if you don't spend government money, you don't have a constituency, because what's one of the biggest blocks of voters that stick together tend to be public employees, right? Because they lobby the very officials that work in government for more money, like publics, the different public unions. And I've said that before. Public unions are very powerful in the state. Unions are very powerful in general. But public sector, I should say, unions, not private, because that to me is, again, I draw a line there. Private unions should be able to do whatever they want with their employees. Government shouldn't have much of a role with any in that, but public is very different. I don't know, Michael. I mean, that's the thing. This has been a topic you and I in this program have harped on for years, but and I'll say this is probably the biggest problem, is collectively as a state, because it's not one person. And I agree on the leadership side. It's not one person. It's not a governor, lieutenant governor. It's not, a Senate president, a House speaker, because individually, even a couple of those aren't really going to be able to do it. It has to be a more collective will between many people that want to get this done. And so you take example for, let's talk about Florida, right? Where you have a governor that has been, in some cases at least, reducing budgets and doing some good work. But there is also a very red legislature behind that governor that has, because the governor can't enact the law, right? He can push them, he can file them, he can do things, but if the legislature won't cooperate, it's not going to happen.
Right.
Well,
right.
DeSantis has had a very strong legislature, a supermajority, in fact, in Florida, that has backed him up and filed those bills and passed these things. They've worked together. That did not happen in Alaska. When's the last time that happened in Alaska? I don't know, maybe the 90s, 2000s, when we had kind of a whole, I don't remember the exact year, when there was a, legislature that was, for example, just all Republican and Republican dominated, Republican controlled, where some of that might have happened. But let's just take that thought and let me read something I got yesterday, because I think you'll find this fascinating with this very topic.
Okay.
How germane to this?
How germane?
So,
How germane? Is
here's
that
an observation?
germane?
Operating expenditure. That's right. That's right. So the operating budget increased from 3.475 billion in fiscal year 2006 to 12.2 billion in fiscal year 2025. This represents a growth of approximately 251% over that 19-year period. Capital expenditures. The capital budget grew from 1.5 billion in fiscal year 2006 to 3.5 billion in fiscal year 2025. This increase of about 133% during that same 19-year period. So let's look at this, Michael, and talk about it. You know how many times I've had certain long-serving legislators sit up on the floor in the Senate and the House and say, well, the government hasn't increased spending at all. It's been flat. In fact, if you include inflation, the really hasn't been an increase to the budget at all. You're really going to tell me that? You're going to tell me that a 250, that's what inflation has been in the private sector over the last 19 years? It's been 251%? Really? That's your story? You're going to stick to that one? Here's my point, Michael, those are numbers, right? Those are just facts. And the capital budget, I'm not going to spend much time on because you and I both know, and your listeners are smart. It goes up and down every year based on what's available and the federal government and things. So that's a different number. But the operating budget is the one to pay attention to, because the operating budget is the one that means people. It means employees. It means defined benefits. It means obligations and liabilities for the government moving forward that our kids and grandkids are going to be stuck with. Because those are, like all things, they're hard to get rid of, if not impossible, it seems, to get rid of. So when people tell us, oh, the government hasn't really increased spending, yes, it has. It has increased by 251%, depending on what numbers you want to use. And they'll try to twist things and say, well, for example, you just said it. Well, we have this $1.5 billion, $1.7 billion deficit. Well, that's partly because the governor in his budget put in a full statutory PFD. All right. So let's just link those two together, shall we? Because they never want to do that. Their contention is going to be, well, we're in deficit spending because you're supersizing the PFD. No, the governor's still following that law and putting it in. But if we have a deficit because we're following the law on the PFD, then what they won't acknowledge but should be acknowledged, the reason that we're in that deficit spending is because the cost of government has gone up, so much so that we have had to take ever more of that permanent fund dividend to pay for that increasing cost of government. They're linked together, Michael. You just have to get people to acknowledge it. But like you said, Dermot Cole, ADN, the news reporters, most all Democrats, apparently some Republicans, well, obviously some Republicans, and a slew of others, the unions that rely on that state funding, right, that government funding, they're not going to say it. That destroys their own narrative, Michael, if they acknowledge that the cost of government has gone up dramatically, is continuing to go up. And if you add the federal government at 36 plus trillion now, not including the well over 100 trillion, 100 plus, I think it's 117 or 120 trillion of unfunded, liabilities, obligations in the future. Michael, the numbers are staggering so much as we just kind of, it's kind of like now you get to that point where you go, you're immune to it, right? You're like, oh, well, yeah, 120 trillion. Yeah, big deal. It's like when it was like 10 billion, you go, okay, I can acknowledge that number. We can deal with it. But 100 trillion, you go, that's too big. I can't even.
I remember when I was in high school and the government was talking about, something, $1 billion bills and how shocking that was. $1 billion. Oh my gosh. They couldn't wrap, and of course now $1 billion is chump change, right? I mean, $1 billion today is like, it's chump change. Oh, $2 billion. $6 billion was siphoned off in fraud or 60 billion, I guess, in fraud during the COVID thing. Oh, that's, we'll get to that one day. 60 billion. And now, like you said, $1 trillion here, $1 trillion there. It's all, the numbers don't even mean anything to anybody anymore.
No. And then how much of that, because it's all being put on the credit card, right? That was maxed a long time ago. And we just go back and keep increasing the limit on our credit card. Put it in terms that we understand that we as regular citizens have to deal with. You have a house expenditure, you got a house mortgage or a rental place that you're living. You have an electric bill, you've got a gas bill, you've got maintenance costs in your car, you've got food, all these different things, and you have a credit card, right? If you are exceeding the cost that you can afford to live on, because here's what you put out every month for expenditures, and here's what you make. and then you have a $20,000 credit card and you've maxed that sucker, and then you go, man, I need 25. So they increase it to 25. They're happy to do that because they're going to put you on the hook and they're going to charge interest and they're going to hammer you.
Yeah.
That credit card company is more than happy to increase that limit on you.
Yeah.
And you keep doing that and keep doing that. That means you are getting to the point, Michael, you are way beyond your ability to pay your bills.
Right.
And somewhere down the road, there's going to be a reckoning for you as a citizen. You're either going to lose your car, lose your house. You're going to get kicked out of your apartment. You're not going to be able to pay the bills. They're going to turn off your power. That's what happens to us as people, as citizens, but not the government, because the government, my friend, is too big to fail.
Right.
That's Dodge coming in and going, you know what, rip the Band-Aid off. You and I have said that on the program for years. Here. Rip the Band-Aid off. Just do it.
Yeah.
Look at it and go, we are spending more than we have. Just cap it.
Yeah.
Cut it off at the knee and let it bleed out. Because if you don't do that, you're going to do what we're doing right now. We're going to keep leveraging the future on our kids' and grandkids' shoulders until there will be a reckoning.
Well, and we're making it worse. That's the worst. That's the problem. Is the crash will be inevitable. The inevitable crash will be worse because we've expended all these resources up to that point. We'll talk about that when we get back. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, in the break right now, State Senator Mike Shower. Sorry, Mike, I didn't mean to run over you there, but we were getting late.
No, no, it's fine. I'm used to it.
Yeah, we were just talking about this yesterday. I mean, I was reckoning that you remember when, what was it? Must have been 10 years ago that Greece had an economic meltdown and the country went bankrupt, and the EU basically put its foot down and said, we're not bailing you out anymore. And they had all those austerity. And remember, the people were like rioting and protesting the austerity. And I'm like, where do you think the money comes? This is what has to happen. I know it's upsetting that you've been getting, X, Y, or Z, whatever it was that you were getting, and now you're not going to get it. But austerity, it's not because somebody didn't want you to have it. It's because there's no more. I mean, at some point, we have to face a fiscal reality. And I think that my fear here is that the legislature has gotten so good at kicking the can down the road that all these people feel like, we're playing musical chairs and they won't be here when the music stops. They'll have moved on, gone, retired, moved to Hawaii or wherever else, doing whatever. They won't be there when the music stops and everybody's scrambling for a chair. It doesn't matter to them. And that's scary. That's really scary.
But that, Michael, is exactly where we're headed. Again, you and I are like the clarion call, right? We've been harping on this, screaming from the mountaintops for some time. And it's almost like, Chicken Little, it's never going to happen. I'm like, no, it's going to happen. It's just a matter of when it's going to happen. It's just we're accelerating it. But I go back to what I read to you there a couple minutes ago. We have absolutely increased government spending. And it's like we're increasing the rate of spending inside the government. And when you add to that, they go, what have we done to get here? The easy, low-hanging fruit has always been the dividend. And the courts, the judicial system, the judges have allowed us to now basically break the law and do whatever we want consistently, multiple times, whether it's a single subject rule, whether it's initiatives that are allowed to have 26 separate topics in them with dark money from outside the state by the Kindles and the others. And the left-wing groups, Air Bill advisors dumping money in the state, whatever it is, they've allowed it to happen. And so we've taken that low-hanging fruit, and that's been one of the biggest arguments I've had against touching the dividend, was that when you couldn't touch it, it was money that, one, went to the private sector. That was a boost. It helps the middle class, the poor, all that stuff, helps the private sector. But it kept our hands out of that cookie jar. Once they took the lid off that cookie jar, we have continued to take more and more cookies, and soon there will be none left. And when they look at it now, like I said, we're on that trajectory. They want to put in a defined benefit plan and take us back to that and spend more money. They want to spend even more on education. They're going to keep going, Michael, until the size of government has grown and taken every penny of the current income it has available to it. And we're going to hit that limit. When we hit that limit, because it's the operating budget, because it's people and contracts and unions and things we can't just get rid of, what will happen next is they're going to then go, now we have to tax. And my question has been consistently, we've said it for years on this program and everywhere else, is who are you going to tax? Alaska has a tiny, small, anemic private sector with very few people working in it. So you're not going to get much money there. You can try to soak the tourist, if you will, maybe in the summertime with a sales tax is best you're going to do on that. And you can go after the few businesses we have, if you're mostly resource development, and look at them and go, there goes Alaska again. Why do you want to develop that place? Why do you want to do business there? They're just going to come after you and take your profits and make it not worth it. You know, the point is we're going to spend everything we have in this legislative body. It doesn't matter who it is. People keep saying, well, let's just keep voting them out. That's great. We've changed out about 3/4 of the legislature in the last 10, 12 years. We're still doing the same thing. It hasn't changed. And so I don't know what else to say, Michael, other than until we hit that brick wall, I don't know that there will be a reckoning. I don't see a dodge happening in Alaska where you got an Elon and Vivek coming in and they're going to clean house and the legislature is going to work with them. I mean, that's not even, you're already seeing the resistance at the federal government. So I don't know. Maybe that is the answer, Michael. Just let it happen, run the car right into the brick wall at full speed, and then we'll have to deal with it.
Gotta go.
I know.
Public enema number one. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number one, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
We're continuing now. State Senator Mike Shower is our guest. We're talking about leadership. We're talking about what's going on in the state. A lot of good points made by Mike here in the last segment. But I want to go back, Mike, to where you started with your response, which was you have been talking about it. Ben Carpenter was talking about it. I know Kevin McCabe has talked about it. I know that I can name a handful of legislators who've talked about it, either all the time or part of the time. The problem is that the movers and shakers, the people who have the reins of control, are not talking about it. So as leaders in a small group who don't have leadership positions, who don't have the bully pulpit, how do we fix this? I mean, first of all, I will say this and I apologize, but before I get you to answer that, let me just say this. I think the governor failed in his leadership in producing a budget that had he included, the reason we have a deficit is that he included a full PFD. Okay, great. That's part of the reason why we have a deficit, but it is the law. So kudos for him for that. But then he didn't balance it by cutting other parts of the budget, which to me would have been the position of a leader. If you're going to propose a budget that follows the law, then you have to balance it. You have to provide it with, that's where the legislature can ignore it. That's totally their purview. But you, as the guy who's supposedly the captain of the ship with 60 people, each with an oar pulling in different directions, you at least should be pointing the boat in the right direction. I'll let you answer now.
Well, I think that is correct. I mean, that's what a leader does, right? Even in tough times, and in fact, maybe that is the most important time for strong leadership is when times are tough, right? Because if times are well and there's prosperity, leadership is not so important because everybody's happy. There's lots of money. The economy's booming. People are, all is well. And, it's not that big of a deal, right? You can have a what we used to call Melba toast, right? Kind of milk toast leadership, whatever. When things are well, you don't really need it. But when things are bad, that is when you need a Churchill, right? I mean, because if you have a Neville Chamberlain during World War II, you're in big trouble, pal. Dealing with with Germany and the Axis powers, et cetera, and you're the only lone power standing, at the gates. But leadership matters more when things are tough, when things are not going well, because that's who's going to steer the ship through the troubled waters, right? So you're not wrong in that leadership is more important when we're in troubled times, and we are in troubled times. And I can't speak for the governor, because I know that it always, you often get asked questions, and I know we're basically chewing our way through this problem here as we're talking about it. But the governor did do that in 2019. His first budget did that. It took
Right.
big chunks and tried to cut it, and then he got just crushed for that and the recall. And I'm not gonna say why the governor is put the budget out the way he did. I haven't talked to him. I don't know. He might have his reasons, and I will ask him when we get a chance to sit down and talk over this session. But that after that first one, he hasn't really done that again. And maybe he just doesn't want to have that fight. Maybe I don't know, maybe his plan is that just accelerate it, hit the wall, let it happen. I don't know what it is. I agree with you that, and I'm not the governor, my goal would be to have a balanced budget and still have follow the law no matter what it is, and just put it out there. And the reason I would do that is because that is what you would need to see happen every time to drive the narrative, to steer the ship. And if the legislature decides to come back and add hundreds of billions of dollars, right, or hundreds of millions of dollars, I should say, that's federal government, right? I skipped that one real quick. But if you're going to add hundreds of millions or even a few billion to it, and you're not going to follow the law, well, I would just continue to point that out, because that's the narrative. That's the bully pulpit. You talked about that, Mike. Sometimes that's the best you can do. If the legislature does what it does, well, then your one last counter to that as the governor is you come in, you line out a veto, and you keep it as low as you possibly can, and then you have that one last battle, right? Because people always get just veto. That's great until the legislature comes in and overrides vetoes, and then it is what it is. That's the form of government we have. And you have people often on here, right? How many times have we talked on the program? Well, just do this. I'm like, that sounds great, except that's not the system of government we have. You're not a dictator as the governor. You're not a dictator as the Senate president or the House speaker. We still have a procedure. We still have rules and regulations that we live under, right? And hopefully following the law. We know that doesn't necessarily happen in Alaska. We've seen it. Well, we talked about that in the last segment, right? With the judiciary and how they've allowed us to blow off things and not follow those laws, right? But that being said, you still should strive to do that, because that's what a leader, that's what a somebody in an elected position should do. Should be following the law. So yes, I agree. That's how I would try to do it if I was in that position, because you have the bully pulpit and you fight that battle. But at the end of the day, you may not win all of those battles. You may not win any of them.
Well, no, and I understand that. Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not saying that he should have done it, and if he did it, it would solve all the problems. I'm saying
I'm just saying I agree with you though on the leadership side. That's the bully pulpit to use it, and you swing where you can. I have a chance to make those same arguments, right? I make them on the floor. I put in amendments. I do my best. I talk on social media and on the radio with you and others, and trying to make that point and do my best in the position I have, which is very limited, obviously, in what power you have. And people are like, well, if you're a Senate president, no, not really. You can affect a few things, but you still have a majority, right? You can get rolled all the time. I've watched the Senate president get rolled before. The committee chairs get rolled. I mean, it happens. So the point is, yes, you use the tools you have available to you. You do your best. You're not always going to win those battles, but you can still try to drive the narrative. And the governorship is a very powerful one, right? Because you do have the microphone, you have people in front of you. The press will generally respond and report, so you can get, a bigger slice, if you will, bigger words out, right? So that does matter, I think, in that sense. But I guess I go back to Mike. I don't know, what we're ultimately going to do to fix this, other than perhaps, hit the accelerator and run this thing into the wall. Because unlike the federal government, we can't just print money here. That's one of the things that has gotten us in trouble, right? We've been the world's reserve currency. We've been able to print money. We've been able to basically just accelerate way past that credit card we ever should have been able to do. And other countries like Greece ran into that brick wall, and they couldn't just print money and force everybody to deal with their currency and make it happen. And unfortunately, the United States has been in a position for too long where we've been able to do that. And that's allowed us to spend our way into oblivion. So I don't know when that brick wall comes and when we hit it. Maybe the brick nations and the push away from the dollar and off the gold standard. There's a lot of things at play here. We could spend hours on this program talking about those different things at play, but they are in play right now. And other countries are tired of watching us be able to have false prosperity with a fiat currency and pump it up while they weren't able to do that. And countries like China and Russia and India and others are getting tired. They're tired of that. So that's why you see this push away from it. So, in one last point, we said it a few weeks ago when we talked last, is like, what's the most important thing, right? Wink, wink. Like, because remember, I've asked you, pejoratively on this program, well, what do you want me to do? Not you, but others, when they say, well, just do this, Mike, do you want me to storm the gates with a rifle in my hand? How's that going to work out, right? To get your way, to do that one most important thing, because to everybody here, they have that one most important thing, whatever it is, carbon credits, abortion, the PFD, judicial reform, election. What's the one most important thing, Mike? Because to everybody here, there's one most important thing. And if you don't do that thing, well, you're just a terrible person. How many most important things can you handle as a governor or as a legislator, Michael? You pick and choose your battles, because we can't solve them all, but everybody gets angry if you don't do that one thing is the most important thing.
Well, let me offer a counterpoint to that. All roads in your scenario there, all roads lead back to money and revenue. So whatever their pet project is, whatever their one thing is all going to lead back to, do we have the money to do it? And so my argument would be that is the most important. The primacy here should be on what are we doing with our money? Because all your projects that all you different guys are talking about and gals are talking about, those are all great, but how do we pay for it? So as far as the number one issue that even is more important than your number one issue is the money. And if we don't get a handle on it, we were talking right before the break, like you said, the worst part is that the further we go, the further we kick this can down the road, the worse the crash is going to be at the other end, because we will have expended so many resources to try and keep convincing people that the emperor is wearing clothes, that we will have consumed all the resources we could use to rebuild if it just crashed today.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. No, Mike, I agree with that. I'd rather crash the car now. Let's just run it right off the road into the tree, because now we still have some ability to recover and rebuild and make it stronger, make it better, right, for our kids and our grandkids. But the problem is, as we have said, if you take it to the very end and you crash, then you really have none of that left. Rebuilding becomes harder, tougher, more dangerous. And so crashing the car early, running the ship into the iceberg early is the preferred method, in my opinion. I'd rather crash it right now, rip the Band-Aid off, let it bleed, and let's figure out the way forward, because we will find ways to have austerity measures. People will find new jobs. The economy will recover. It will take the appropriate path that it needs to. It's funny how it seems to just naturally heal itself, right? If you let it go, if you don't have central planning and false fiat currency and false policies that continue that path of destruction economically, right? So letting the economy, the capital structure, the free market handle itself, it will naturally go where it needs to. It's like electric cars, right? You push them out there and you basically use government money to keep it going, subsidize it, then you can have a false market for that. But without that government subsidy, somebody else's taxpayer dollars, they will fail. And that's where you're seeing the pullback now, because the market is not naturally going in that direction, because the people, the consumer, the economy sees that and goes, it's like a mind of its own, right? It has a mind. It goes, no, we're not ready for that. It's not the right thing. It's not a money-making venture. It's not economically viable. We're not going to do it if you turned it loose without central planning. So I agree with you. I would rather crash it early and see where we go. But the problem is, like I said, is that we want to keep propping up that currency. We want to keep propping up government. We want to keep saying, no. We keep spending money. We'll be fine. We've got money to spend. Let's spend it, as opposed to saving it or ripping it off. And they're going to go back to, Mike, I'm telling you, that's why I keep linking it together in the discussion, is you can't get away from the permanent fund dividend, because the problem is that we have used that as the cookie jar. and we are getting towards the bottom of the cookie jar. And frankly, as I have said, while I am pleased that Trump was elected because I see a pro-capitalist, pro-economic, pro-America administration, which would also be pro-Alaska for resource development. The problem is that you're going to see, if they are successful with Dodge, you're going to see a reduction in federal money, which is going to hurt Alaska because we take much more money from the federal government than we give it. So that's going to impact us. And you're going to see, I think, fracking and other things take off with energy independence in the United States once again, which means the price of oil is going to go down.
Right.
Which means Alaska can be hammered there. So Alaska, my friend, may be seeing austerity measures sooner rather than later, which is back to our philosophical point here.
Right.
Maybe we will crash the ship sooner rather than later and force us to fix it, because that's kind of where, with the federal government changes, I see is actually probably going to accelerate that problem for us. I'm okay with that, my friend. I'd rather deal with it now rather than later. So maybe it's okay. Maybe that's the answer.
All right. We got to continue here. State Senator Mike Shower is our guest in the next segment. I'm going to let him pick the topic for segment 3, and we'll see where we go from here. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Back with more right after this.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes.
Allowing all of these entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay. We're continuing here in the break. State Senator Mike Shower is our guest. I think somebody said that Harold had been replaced with Chat GPT this morning, and I think they might be right, because he's obviously not really listening to the questions that are being asked. How do we fix the economy, Mike? I know that's a broad question, but in the state of Alaska, what would be your fix as a airline pilot or as an airplane pilot? How would you? In your mind, what would fix the economy in the state of Alaska? What would get the private economy going and bring us back on track? So just
first point, you notice how I always avoid saying anything regarding airplane crashes with the economy. Do you ever notice that?
Yeah.
I talk about crash or talk about running the ship in the iceberg.
Never
ever mention crashing the airplane.
Right.
That's bad. Bad mojo. We don't go there.
Yeah.
So just saying. So it is a broad question, Michael, but I still think that an important part of the economy, the economic landscape, if you will, is that when governments do what we are doing, both in this and other states, in Alaska and others, and the federal government, overall, when those governments make an unstable business environment, when they are hard to measure how they're going to policy and regulation and law wise regulate and affect the private sector economy, it is very difficult to have a good booming economy, especially in one as dependent as we are upon federal government money and resource development that can be just turned off or on at a whim, right? Executive orders from Biden, shut us down, 70 of them. Or turned back on by Trump. What happens 4 years from now? I don't know. Turned off again if it's another Democrat. So economic, and I don't want to say policies, but economic impacts by the government and its inability to get its act together to prove to people that we can live within our means, that we're not going to increase spending beyond what we have available, that we're going to be stable and sustainable, matters. Because businesses look at that and go, should we invest in Alaska? Should we dig? Should we drill? Should we build? If the answer is we don't know that Alaska is a good business environment, it's going to be very hard to have a booming, stable economy, because the private sector is going to go, not going to put money there. We're going to go take it somewhere else where we can make more money and have a stable environment. Florida, Texas, Tennessee, Idaho, name the states that are doing well, that are booming, because the businesses are going, nope, that's where to make money. And businesses are not a charity, Mike. They're here to make money. And the federal government can be charitable with their money, right? Because it's not their money. They're writing up checks with other people's money. It's easy to be charitable when it's not your money. So I hesitate to say the government has a fix. That what does the government do? What the government really should do is to get the heck out of the way and become stable, live within our means, stay in our lane of creating budgets that provide the essential services that are needed, but also live within our means and not exceed those means, and then show everybody that we are going to be stable and sustainable moving forward. We're going to be good business partners. And I think maybe above everything else we could do, if that's all we did, I think you would see more investment in the state. I think the private sector could grow with a federal government that was pro-resource development, pro-Alaska, and a state of Alaska itself that would live within its means. If we would just do those things, I think you would see a private sector that could boom and grow. It was 4 years ago before the malaise of the Biden-Harris administration. And it's not just that administration, but that's my point. It's almost more philosophical, really, Mike, for when you say, what can the government do? It's almost more what the government shouldn't do, or what it should show how it's going to operate, so that people can have the sense of stability and the sense of calm that, yeah, we can invest, we can grow, we can build, because the government's not going to come after us. They're not going to change their mind. They're not going to spend more money and need more taxes from us. We don't know what Alaska is going to do. Isn't that the thing? How many times have we said that in this program? Why would you invest here? Because you never know what the state's going to do. Oh, they're going to come after us for taxes next year because they spent more than they have. Oh, they're going to have defined benefits back. Oh, they're going to increase education spending to be the most expensive in the nation. And what does a business owner do? Yep, they're going to be coming after me again. Why would I do more here? That's my point, Michael. It's more of a philosophical what the government shouldn't be doing, or how it should be living inside of its means and creating that stability. That may be the biggest answer to me, because passing a law, a stable budget, that's a part of it, but it's more, what do people sense the government's going to do or not do, right? To me,
right. Well, I mean, I think the biggest thing is that if the government was living within its means, it would mean more money in the private economy. It would mean more, more ability to invest. Because what we've got right now is we've got malinvestment because the government is trying to do everything instead of letting the private sector fill. Like you said, get out of the way. I think you're right. That's one of the most important things. All right, 5 seconds. Here we go. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all that stuff. Here we go.
The Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
Yes, sir. We are continuing. State Senator Mike Shower is our guest. The Shower Hour of Power, which somebody pointed out to me, the acronym is SHOP. So we're going to go shop. We're going to shop today. Eddie. He's a shopping fool. Senator Mike Shower, I said I would give you the final segment to talk about any topic that you wanted to hit on. So the floor is yours, my friend. What else is on your mind today, or do you want to continue on? You drive the bus here.
Well, I think it's one of the things I've been paying attention to over the last few weeks, really since the election, is I am really focusing outside. If I go outside the state, because we've been talking about that for 2/3 of the program, is what else is going on that's going to impact us. Well, you have the federal government, right, with a Trump administration that's going to be very, I think, pro-resource development for us, so big for Alaska. But and that's long-term, right, not short-term. We're going to get hammered short-term. Alaska is going to be struggling. You can feel it. You can see how this is going to go, not because of anything negative the Trump administration is going to do, but like I said, the price of oil and other things are going to impact us. Dodge is going to impact us, et cetera. That has to happen. But I look more broadly, I see when you look at things that are happening now, I don't want to circle or spend too much time on Islam, but Islam is still out there. It's like we've forgotten for a while that Islam exists, that it is an existential threat to this nation and to the West and to freedom in general, because of its political, because it's not a religion. They always say that, right? But it's not. It's a political, system that has religion woven through it, but around the world, they're on the march again. And we're seeing the rise of these attacks, and you're seeing ISIS, and others that are still out there, Al Qaeda affiliates, et cetera, that are back and doing things. So when you have a very strong country or strong leadership like Trump, you're going to see, I think, more of that. We're already seeing it. We've seen a couple of Army guys lately, some weird stuff about that cyber truck in Las Vegas, tied with a guy down in New Orleans. I think you're going to see the rise of some of that rioting, et cetera, again, because you can already see that rumble of the Democrats saying, get in people's faces. They always say that, oh, the right are the violent ones. No, it's the left. You and I know that. The right doesn't do these things. The right doesn't burn cities to the ground, right? The right doesn't drive trucks into, crowds. That they don't blow stuff up. That's what we've seen out of the left over the 4 years of the Trump administration previously, right? Across the country, BLM, Antifa, and others. So I think we just need to be aware that we're probably going to see more of that again, because that's what the left does. It stirs up trouble. It's not, you can't, I guess that's what I'm trying to say here, Michael, is we don't want to forget that, it's not just about Alaska. It's not just our budget and the battle over the PFD and the things we're dealing with here, because everything outside of us still affects us. What happens with the federal government? What happens to the rest of our country? What happens to our allies? What China does? What Russia's doing? The war in Ukraine and the money we're spending. I mean, all of these things are linked together because this world is too small. And so, as I often do on the program with you and the listeners, is continue to make sure that we are discussing things that may affect us. Not that you don't want to run to your bunker, and it's not meant to be gloom and doom. It's meant to be aware, right? It's that thing we talked about. If we were to go to a Firearms Friday, what's your state of awareness? If you live in, and there's different color metrics out there for it. Like, you can go, well, white is you're just a sheep, you're clueless, you're walking to your car as a lady, and you're looking in your purse, while the van with no windows is parked beside your car. Probably not a good idea, right? You're clearly don't live that way. What the law enforcement will talk about is yellow, right? Living in a state of what they call professional paranoia. You're aware of what's going on around you, and you know that something could happen, so you're always prepared, but you got to keep your heart rate low. If you go into red, that's like battle, right? Somebody's attacking you. Black is like it's so bad you shut down, right? You're back to being in combat.
Right.
So my point is, we need to live in that state of professional paranoia. It means that we are just aware of what's going on around us. But when I say that, I'm talking today, right now, this last segment is what else is going on? What's happening with Islam around the world? Watch that march. Watch what's happening in Europe right now, my friend. They are in big, big trouble. Look at the rape gangs. If it wasn't for Elon Musk and buying X and highlighting these things, all these things would still be hidden. Epstein, the island, the list, what's going on down in South America. Look at what's happening with that one president down there and the things he's doing that are just absolutely kicking it right now and changing that. I mean, just turning things upside down, but in a positive way. So a lot of these things are very linked to us and what happens. And so we should be aware of that, right? It's like we talked about, I think one of our last things before we went on the holiday break over the last couple of weeks was, looking at a gas line. I still think the gas line is a project that is needed for us, both internal use, but what it does as far as a stability issue, right? So to me, the gas line would be spending money that is not going to pencil out yet because it's a strategic thing, right? It's like building the port of Pearl Harbor because the war may come and you can see it on the horizon. And everybody goes, well, why are you spending the money now? It's not happening right now. I go, no, I know it's not. But the problem is you can't just turn it on tomorrow. It's like building F-22s, right?
So
we need more F-22s. Well, if you're going to do that, pal, you better start it 10 years ago because you can't turn that on overnight.
Right.
It's going to take you 10 years to get it spun up.
Well, let me interrupt you there. They say, so are you suggesting that the gas pipeline, the LNG, Alaskan LNG line, would be a strategic asset, and it's something that the government, federal or state, should just build? And then is that the suggestion here?
Well, we talked about that, right? So I don't want to spend too much time because that will crush the last few minutes of the program. But my point of that is that I don't generally, and you know this because we've said it for many years, is go build a bridge to nowhere. I'm not going to agree to that. Just like I'm never going to agree to a new tax ever until I see the government live within its means with a spending cap and other provisions that make it balanced, right? Long term in the law, not just policy, in the law. But if you want to discuss building a gas line, because you mentioned it towards the beginning of the program, if you're going to discuss building it, then the federal government and the state government may have to step up and provide some incentive, whether that be some money or other incentives to make it a viable project for now, And I'm acknowledging, which I've said, because we have to acknowledge reality, it doesn't pencil out economically. No company or companies are going to come in, which we've seen for years now, right? It doesn't pencil out. We're not going to come spend $40 billion to do that. We're not going to get money back. I agree. But if we believe and look at it and go, that is a strategic asset that we are going to need in 5 or 10 or 15 years, then we better start building it. And the only way I see of that happening right now is for the federal and state government to cough up some money and other incentives to then get private sector partners to come in to go, okay, now we're willing to do that, because we're not just going to take the big hit. And sometimes, Michael, like I said, why are we building aircraft carriers? Those are just taking money, partner. They're expensive. So are submarines and F-22s and nuclear missiles. You name it all. We're building that because strategically as a nation, we go, that's something we're going to spend money on that doesn't pencil out. The military never pencils out, my friend, until you go to war. Right? Or you could say in one sense it pencils out because it keeps you from going to war because you're so strong nobody wants to fight you. So what I'm saying is I'm kind of applying that philosophical bent to a gas line.
Right.
It's like I look at that as a strategic asset of something that it doesn't really pencil out right now.
Okay.
But it's probably something we need to figure out how to build, because it's going to at some point what that provides us is going to be important.
All right,
so,
we're down to 2 minutes here, so I'll let you summate here for the last 2 minutes.
Shoot, I don't know, Michael. I mean, now we're going to have to switch gears as we get into the legislative session. What bills are being filed? You know, how does the House and Senate finally flesh out? What does it look like? Parsing through the governor's budgets. So, yeah, we're going to have plenty to talk about, right? I mean, so it's a little different dynamics in the Senate. I mean, they still got all the votes they need to pass whatever they want. It's not really going to matter, but the dynamics are changing, and pressures on some of the Republicans, because it's not just, 3 that shoved to the side anymore. So, it's changing. We'll see. But I still predict that this session is going to be pretty, if you're a conservative, if you're a Republican that's not very left of center, you're probably not going to be real happy about most of what you're going to see out of the legislative session.
Yeah.
So, most likely.
Be a little frustrating. It's going to be a little bit of an exercise in frustration, I imagine, for those of us who want a government that lives within their means. Because all we're hearing about right now is how if we want the state to be successful, we need to spend more. Right? That's what we're hearing right now from pretty much everybody who's got the pulpit.
Yeah, well, Michael, we have more voice this time, so we'll do our best to jump up and down and work with the governor and hopefully hold the line on any bad stuff like bad election bills or whatever coming out. And we'll put in the amendments to reduce spending. We'll put in bills to try work with the governor and the much stronger minority in the House, because they've got numbers, right? So we'll see. But, I don't predict anything fantastic because it's controlled by Democrats, and Democrats are anti-resource development and big government, big spenders. So that's the direction it's going to go. It just is what it is.
It is what it is. We're braced.
Battle.
All I can hear is brace yourself, Gertrude. Here it comes. This is what we're looking for here in the upcoming session. You with us next week, Mike?
Yeah, I should be around.
Okay.
No problems.
Okay.
We'll chit chat.
All right, we'll chit chat next week. Maybe I'll let him have the whole topics for the show instead of driving the bus.
We'll talk shop again.
We'll talk shop.
Week.
Oh, see, I like that. Talk shop. There you go. The shower hour of power. Out of time, folks. We'll see you Monday. Be kind. Love one another. Live well. All right, Mike. One final bite at the apple, just in case there was something we didn't get to. Want to give you a chance real quick here before I got to go.
There's nothing you and I can talk about in 90 seconds or less on this program, unless it's bacon, where we just bacon.
I know. I always smile when you say, "Let me just give you a brief answer," and I'm like, yeah.
Well, I don't do sound bites because
Yeah.
I hate them, right?
Yeah.
Because that's just very political. And almost everything we discuss, there is so much behind it. There are so many things, Michael. We could, as we have, we could pick one topic and spend the entire hour talking about it. And we're still probably not going to get to the real depth that would be needed to really start talking about truly what the foundational issues are and what you might do to solve it. I mean, we could throw some stuff out, and we cover a lot of things. It's hard to do that and really do it justice, right? It's like looking at a picture and you go, "Oh, it's beautiful. It's the most amazing thing. Look at this picture." And you look at the phone and the picture on the phone, and yeah, that looks cool. It doesn't do it justice. because unless you see it yourself and you really go to that level of every pixel in your mind of what it is, it's hard to truly get to that depth that we need to. So, I mean, I know I'm just making fun of your comment of like, a brief answer. I can't. Yeah. I'm not going to do that. That sells it short, my friend.
Yeah, I got it.
Not,
Yeah, I got it. I know.
That is the exact answer of what you just said we were going to do.
It's one of the reasons. Yeah, it's one of the reasons why I do long form and I don't do short form, because these issues are more complex than a soundbite, and that's what we need. All right, Mike, thanks for coming in. I appreciate you being part of it today. We'll see you next week, okay?
All right, man. You guys be good. See ya.
All right, see you later. All right, folks, we're out of time. I got to go. We're going to take off here. I got a conference call to get to, so we're going to bail out right now. Be kind, love one another, live well. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.